On the Dallas Opera Network, you're listening to operaboxscore.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Wherever you are, however you're listening, it's America's Talk radio show about opera. It's Opera Box Score. I'm George Cedarquist, joined this week by Oliver Camacho and Weston Williams. All right, here we go. Oliver gets inside the huddle with Ian Koziara to talk about performing Fidelio for the deaf and having a darker, lower tenor voice that works well in German repertoire, but we won't say that word. Plus 2-minute drill. The Met Lucia is a flop, but director Simon Stone has already been rehired. If you're watching on TDO, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Get that full show. Stitcher, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You know what to do. Also, send us a voice memo. Email us your hot takes, operaboxscore@gmail.com. You're going to get an OBS beer coaster and an OBS lapel pin just for sharing your hot take. Oliver Camacho, great to see you as always. What's on your mind?
Are we talking about sports right now, or is it not time for that yet?
Sports.
It's sports. It's always sports time, Oliver.
And that's Weston Williams, everybody. We have no Matt Cummings and no Ashley today, but we'll make up for them in more ways than you can even imagine.
More ways than none.
Yeah. So the 18-year-old Spanish tennis player Carlos Alcaraz has broken into the top 10. He's actually world number 9 right now, and he's on track to be a major contender in the French Open, the clay court tournament. I think he's already won 2 finals this year, and he's just like, he's the giant slayer when it comes to other players in the top 10. And
He says he's a giant slayer. I really should watch out.
True. And Novak Djokovic's own tournament in Belgrade. Djokovic was in the final yesterday, but lost in 3 sets. Third set 6-0 to Andrei Rublev.
Ouch.
Yes. Sorry, Novak. Having a
He
bad
probably
year.
had COVID.
Who knows? So
Weston Williams, what sport are you practicing these days?
I tried a new sport this weekend. I was out of town for a wedding weekend for a friend of mine. I was in the bachelor party, and we went paintballing, which is a sport that I am bad at because I move slowly, very deliberately, very precisely, very largely. And let me tell you, I had to throw away my pants afterwards because there was no saving them. But I have several bruises, but I had a good time, and I would do it again.
You can get bruises from paintball, I think.
Oh yeah, I got one right here, one right here.
Oh,
I'm not sure
man.
they're showing up on the camera. One right here, and one in other places that I can't talk about.
If you're listening to the podcast, that was really gross. Sports in Chicago, this is just not a good time right now. The Bulls are on the brink of elimination against the Milwaukee Bucks. Cubs have lost 7 of the last 10 games to go below 500. And the Blackhawks season will end on Friday because they didn't make the playoffs.
Ugh, bad Monday, huh?
I think we shall talk some opera.
Wait, isn't game 5 of the Bulls? Is that tomorrow? By the time
Yeah, but
they're gonna lose. Yeah,
no,
they've been so lopsided. I have a friend that's visiting from France and was so excited he bought tickets to go see the Bulls.
That's awesome.
And they just fell down so hard. It's sad.
Huddle up. Let's go inside the huddle.
So, a few years ago, I heard this tenor, Ian Koziara, at the Steens Institute, the Young Artist Program at Rivinia Festival. And he's just one of those voices where it's like, oh, we're going to do that, huh? Where it's not an Italianate sound. It's not, it's not like a sunny, young, youthful tenor sound. He has that quality, and I won't say it, but like that suggests where his voice is going to go. We have a total discussion.
Very heroic sound, I think.
Well, could be. But we end up deciding on what his Fach really is. But let's just say he sounds great in German music, and he's still a young guy. He just turned 30. He just
That's
won.
incredible because I don't know if Ian would remember me, but he and I were at Chautauqua together, and
Drink.
it's like the guy was born at like 55, and that's a compliment.
Yeah.
He was so mature. Like all those young artists at young artist programs, man, they're all like messing around. Like Ian's just so mature.
Yeah, he's got his head on straight and he understands his voice, which is great. And he understands what he needs to do to like just sing healthy and see what happens. So we're going to start this interview listening to him sing a little Wagner. I wonder why. But this is actually one of the Wesendonck-Lieder. This is Träume. Ian Koziara with Zalman Kelber singing one of the Wesendonck-Lieder of Wagner, Träume. Welcome to Opera Box Score. Ian, when was that recording made?
Oh my gosh, I think that would have been 2017, maybe 2018.
Okay, that was around the time that I first heard you sing, I think, at as a fellow of the Ravinia Steens Music Institute, which is a program that I have a crush on. And I've heard many great singers there, like Nadine Sierra back in the day, and Misha Brugers-Gozman, and Amanda Forsyth was an artist in that program, and Samuel Hasselhorn. Oh my God, Samuel
Great singer.
Hasselhorn.
We were there the same year, 2014.
I know. And yeah, I remember hearing you sing for the first time, and just like, I mean, this is like ostensibly a sports podcast, and so I'm going to be doing a bad metaphor here, but you have like a fast ball, or maybe I should say, like, it put it in tennis terms, like you like know how to like pull the trigger on certain notes, and you just know how to add a little bit of metal into the sound, and it just becomes like very thrilling and penetrating. And it seems like you could do it in a lower part of your voice than most tenors can do it. I think tenors really enjoy, pulling the trigger, in the upper middle and above the passaggio. But you seem to be able to actually pull the trigger in a more medium low part of the voice,
Sure.
which begins to suggest a Fach that maybe you're not comfortable being considered in that Fach yet. But I think a lot of people who first hear you sing like start to get ideas like, oh, we have one of these on our hands. And so we'll just dance around that Fach, but let's just say Germanic tenor.
Sure.
Do you remember the first time somebody recognized that quality in your voice and, maybe talk to you, young man, did you know?
Yeah, I actually do. It was in an email. I had just done my undergrad auditions. So I was either 17 or 18. And the school, Lawrence University, to which I ended up attending,
in Appleton, Wisconsin?
In Appleton, Wisconsin,
Okay.
with Miss Zoe Reams and I were in the same class.
Oh, wow.
Fabulous singer. But I remember the coach saying, you have the makings of this sort of German tenor sound, but of course, at age 18. There's not a ton you can do about it. So it's a matter of, picking the right keys for art songs when you're studying primarily that for the first couple of years, and then being very particular about the first aria as you start studying in your early 20s.
Yeah. So right now, what seems to fit you very well is Mozart. And later on, we'll hear this really great For Del Mar that you sing. And, not all of the German tenors have the ability to do the coloratura. And I think I even heard a trill in there. I was like, oh, nice, Is the coloratura something that you worked on, or is that something that just came naturally to you? Or
I wish I could say that was something, I worked on, but it just came pretty naturally.
Okay. So is Bach in, the sphere of possibility for you, or is that too light, for lack of a better word?
Gosh, I love Bach. I love Handel too. It doesn't get offered that often, if I'm honest. The things that tend to get offered are, Wagner and some of the early 20th century German composers, Zemlinsky, Schreker, Berg. But I love that stuff, of course.
Well, it's not hard to figure out, that you've done a lot of young artist programs. And Lindemann is one that you're associated with. You did for 3 years. And there are others. Being the type of tenor that you are, do you have maybe some stories about what people thought you could do and maybe misfalked you or tried to give you stuff too early because there's that excitement in hearing a voice like yours,
Yeah. I don't have any particularly, egregious stories. One of the things I really appreciated about the Met is because the season is so long and there's so much to do, you're able to get on stage, even in relatively small capacities, in operas that just don't get done that much in the U.S. So, I got to be one of the squires in Parsifal in the absolutely incredible production the Met has of that. There were a couple of
who was it with Kaufman? That one?
Oh God, no. So the original production was I was doing the remount of it, which was Klaus Florian Vogt, which is a very different flavor of German tenor from Jonas Kaufmann. But yeah, there were definitely sort of scenes or arias that we were testing out in Lindemann and figuring out, would this work well? Would this not work well? I remember I had a moment for about 6 months with Aîné from Les Troyens, and that was a good stretch, but definitely a stretch. That was a real challenge to see. Okay, can my voice do this in a natural way? But it was super cool. I really enjoyed it.
Well, can you describe for maybe people who don't listen to as much opera as we do or as much singers as we do, like what you think the difference is between somebody who does German music well as opposed to somebody who has a more Italianate sound?
Yeah, I actually don't think it's that there's that much necessary difference. I think there are certain things that tend to be typical of that. But if you look at someone like Jonas Kaufmann and you look at someone like Klaus Florian Vogt, these are two people who sing tons and tons and tons of German repertoire and sing a lot of the same roles, and they're completely different colors. But I think, like, if I had to pick out one thing that I think is sort of characteristic of all the people who sing that kind of rep, it's the ability to either beef up or blade up the middle of the register over quite a big orchestra. You're expected to sing C's and D's in the middle of your range at a volume or with the cut that can make singing over quite a large orchestra possible. That happens in plenty of Italianate rep. It's just you're usually a fourth or fifth higher when you're doing it.
Where the voice has a natural brilliance to it.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So that's why you tend to get a lot of people who sort of train up from baritone. Which admittedly I did sing some baritone in high school. So doing that kind of thing.
So for those of us who don't have that ability, is it a matter of like pouring on air, or is there something you do with the resonance that gives that cut? And well, I'll let you answer the question first, then I have a follow-up question. So.
Yeah, I think it usually has more to do with blade than with heft, right? And I think there might be tenors who sing differently than me that go the other way. But I think usually for me, it's a matter of just adding a little bit of snarl and a slightly more forward placement. Usually it's not a good idea for me to like try and artificially beef up the sound, you know. I've done it occasionally when I'm like doing an impression of a voice. You know, I'm thinking of the moment in, do you know, Schudemüllerin? There in the fifth song on Feierabend, there's a moment where the tenor can if he wants imitate the Meister.
Okay.
And I would definitely do it there as a funny thing, but usually just as a recipe for like cutting over an orchestra, it's usually a bad idea. So for me, it's more about Blade.
So this idea of Blade is one I think I've known, but I've never heard anybody use that term. Is that a term that somebody taught you, like as a technical, you know, resonance placement type of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, you know, there are a lot of words that I think sort of refer to roughly the same thing, whether it be blade or ping or snarl or focus. I think they're all talking about roughly the same thing. But it's this idea of a slightly more forward placement, a slightly, you know, emphasizing the trebliness of the sound without removing the sort of support and dome that makes for an elegant and well-balanced operatic sound.
Right. So maybe this is what we've kind of unpacked it for the audience, or maybe you're unpacking it for me. When you put your voice in this placement, it no longer is bel canto.
Maybe.
Because then you don't have access to, you know, quick register changes or, you know, lots of, you know, scaly passages. Even though we're going to hear you sing For Del Mar in a minute, which sort of is contradicting that. But I think that's what it is. Like, I think people who sing this type of music don't like to move their voices fast, because putting it in this spot, you know, it's okay to like put it in a spot, and then you can, you know, feel how you're cutting through the orchestra, and to like go up and down very quickly, and that like is maybe, I don't know, scary or like not comfortable, you know. Then you have people like Lucia Pop who could do it, and then so there goes my theory just crumbling down, you know.
Well, no, and I think it depends on the circumstance, right? So like for example, with something like For Del Mar, it's a bigger Mozart orchestra, but I'm never under any worries of being well heard over a Mozart orchestra. I sort of can take for granted that if I'm providing a well balanced sound, particularly in some place like Wolf Trap, but really anywhere against that kind of orchestra, that I'm going to be heard fairly well. And which gives you a ton of freedom, right, to experiment with ideas. You know, For Del Mar is a long aria, to give some real sottovoce moments and some real sort of shy, you know, the opposite extreme.
So, we were talking about, I wanted to talk about For Del Mar some more, because we're going to hear it, and we should probably just hear it right now. Let's just like, we've been talking about it enough. So here it is. This is from the Wolf Trap opera performance. I don't know what year this is. Maybe you do.
2018, I want to say.
Okay, so not that long ago. This is with the Wolf Trap Opera Orchestra and Jeffrey MacDonald. just a little bit of Idomeneo's aria For Del Mar to show that, yes, he can do the stuff that Oliver cares about the most. the legato, coloratura stuff. But you're the one that brought up the word snarl. And I remember the first time I heard you sing, I was like, oh, well, Peter Grimes was the first thing that came to mind. So have you already been offered a Peter Grimes, or are you working on it, or?
Oh, I wish. I mean, for me, my sort of three favorite / dream roles have been Idomeneo, Parsifal, and Peter Grimes, and they're very different in lots of ways. But I actually think there's a common sort of tortured element to all of them.
Mhm.
I would love to do Peter Grimes, but haven't been offered it yet.
Yeah, I mean, there are moments in your voice that remind. I don't know if people have said this to you before, that remind me of John Vickers, and your own voice, and like it's your own tone quality, and so. But I mean, there's just something about, like, especially in your lower register, where there's a texture to your sound that feels like, oh, that's going to be very exciting, one day. It's already exciting, don't get me wrong, but you're one of these voices that I feel just everybody's just waiting to see what's going to happen. And will you sing Florestan? And apparently you do now.
Yeah.
Are you 29 right now?
Just turned 30 a couple weeks ago.
Okay. That's right. You just turned 30 because you just aged out of a competition you won. Like a minute ago.
Exactly. It was the last year.
So that competition is a Chicago-based competition for those who are listening elsewhere, called Luminarts. And it's a very nice competition, and they give you a nice amount of money. So congratulations.
Incredible, really wonderful organization, by the way, that supports much more than just operatic singing.
Yeah,
so
like
check them out.
Poets and like jazz artists and other musicians. So, okay, so we really wanted to talk about this LA Phil, was that what it was? LA Philharmonic concert, Fidelio, which you just finished.
Yes.
As Florestan, conducted by Gustavo Dudamel. So first I want to hear about the performance for the deaf. Can you tell us about how that worked, and like, did you have to do any extra preparation, or was it all done by other people to help supplement, the presentation for, to make it more of a visual thing? Like, I'm just, I only read about it. Obviously I haven't seen it. So I'd love to know what the brainchild of that was, and, what that experience was like.
It was an undeniably incredible experience. Probably one of my favorites I've ever had on the stage. So it was a combo platter. All of the normal German dialogue was removed and replaced with ASL dialogue performed by the deaf or hard of hearing actors. Okay. And so each role had two performers, a singer and then an actor, who at times worked relatively separately and at times worked very closely together. And it sort of depended on the dramatic situation as to what we were doing with each other. So in the case of Florestan, one of my favorite moments in the entire opera was at the very beginning of Florestan's aria, where he was able to sort of essentially go into convulsions, and I was directly behind him, mostly obscured to the audience, singing this sort of very famous pianissimo, molto crescendo, which is probably the most fun note in the whole role to sing. But it was incredibly cool because as a singer, there's a certain palette of colors that are just not available to you because so much of what you're doing is regimented for you in the score. Mm-hmm. So, and we run into this oftentimes when we have sort of more regie directors in Germany saying, "Oh, can you sing, For Del Mar while you're hanging upside down?" And we're like, "No, probably not." But when you've got an actor who isn't burdened by some of the athletic requirements of singing, the world is really their oyster. And so we were able to experiment with really cool physical ideas that would be very different if there were more sort of concrete singing concerns at work. Mm-hmm. So created this really beautiful counterpoint also where each deaf actor had a different level of deafness. So there were a couple who genuinely couldn't hear anything and were going off of physical cues. But
Were they watching the conductor?
Yeah, so they would
Okay.
watch the conductor. We also had an ASL prompter
Okay.
who was prompting them with lines if they forgot, and then they would also go off the body language of the singer to be sure where they were both emotionally and text wise. But I happened to have Josh, who's absolutely wonderful, who probably had the most hearing of any of the actors on stage.
That was the actor paired with you. So.
The actor paired with me,
Okay,
exactly. So what was super cool is you would get this counterpoint between actor and singer, where each deaf actor was dealing with a very slightly different picture that they were getting from the music and from the singer, ranging from going completely off the visual because there was no auditory input to having a relatively good idea of what the music sounded like, and getting to infuse it with an element that those of us who've grown up with hearing would often take for granted.
Yeah. I mean, was there a hearing audience in the house for that performance? Was it all only invited were deaf?
It was both.
How many performances were there for deaf audiences or hearing impaired audiences?
So it was 3 performances, 3 days in a row, which is, as
Ouch.
you know, yeah, could be a little bit of a challenge. But all of the audiences were mixed. So the front 15 rows or so were reserved for deaf or hard of hearing audiences because we didn't have jumbotrons to show the signs on. So they wanted to make sure everyone could see the signs from a reasonable distance. But the back, probably 2/3 of the audience was hearing audiences.
Okay.
So I think one of the things that was super useful is it's pretty obvious, of course, that as someone who grew up with hearing, that they're getting to see an element of an art form that they're not accustomed to. But I also think it was equally, if not more, wonderful for people who grew up with hearing to get to see this expressive art form that we're often just not exposed to at all.
Yeah, I don't know what that. I mean, I can imagine what it looks like. I mean, I attend dance performances, and I know a little bit about the dance world, and I feel like opera, we cut ourselves off at the feet by not embracing movement, enough. But I also am a singer, so I know how hard it is to concentrate on something else when you have to sing, Florist dance entrance, and the rest of that opera, so
yeah,
it's sort of a marathon once you start,
exactly.
Yeah, so that's a big thing, and you got to do it with Ryan Speedo Green, who is like the fastest rising star. I mean, it's been a slow burn, honestly, for him. It hasn't been overnight, but it seems like this is the year that everybody's going to learn that guy's name,
Oh, incredible singer.
And Gustavo Dudamel was conducting this thing. I mean, I've been talking about this guy for a long time on another platform that I have. Who knew that he was going to become an opera conductor?
Yeah, it all kind of happened fast there, didn't it?
Yeah.
He's really wonderful. I mean, the thing that I walked away most with him, he has an incredible ear for tempo. And I think, particularly with something like Fidelio, that is that can feel a little long if you're not very careful about tempi choices. Dudamel was so wonderful. I mean, every single number he seems to have his eye perfectly on exactly the tempo that both the singer needed, but also the audience. The second act quartet is a good example where I remember us trying out a couple of tempos in rehearsals and then him sort of committing to one, and it's this sort of terraced accelerando throughout the whole quartet.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, not only does it make it easier to sing, it makes it more fun on a dramatic level. And it was just an absolute joy. I mean, he's an unbelievable. Oh my God.
And how is his German?
Oh, very good. I mean, you never expect these people to have perfect pronunciation.
Yeah.
But he's got an incredible ear for the language. My God, I mean, I remember him giving out German notes, and there's always the question with conductors like, oh, how good is their German going to be? Because with German conductors you expect it, but then there are people who are not German, and it's a very different. I feel like it's a very different language
than Spanish.
to teach diction for than Spanish. The priorities are different. I can't imagine an Italian conductor emphasizing the consonants quite so much as you do, particularly initial consonants, as you do in German. But Dudamel, I feel like he had exactly the right idea. And you could hear that he had the flavor of the language in his ear the whole time.
Well, on Opera Box Score, we tend to bring it to sports as much as possible. But since you just said the word flavor, it reminds me that you also are really into food. And I just saw on Facebook that you ate at the inn at, what's it called again?
The inn at Little Washington.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's in Virginia?
Yeah, so it's in Rappahannock County, and there are 13 3-Michelin star restaurants in the U.S., and only 2 of which are not in the Bay Area or New York area. And this is the only one of the 13 that could be reasonably described as being in a rural setting. It's a solid 90 minutes outside of D.C., in a very rural region, and it was unbelievable.
And Alinea is the other one, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So Alinea in Chicago, which is Grand Achatz, and it's sort of that, what do they call that? Science?
Molecular gastronomy.
Molecular gastronomy. Yeah. I don't know if he's still doing that or if he's moved away from that, but.
Oh, no. That's still doing it.
Yeah. That's sort of his game, And this restaurant, what type of cooking was the inn?
No. So I went to Alinea for the first time just 2 months ago, and I think it was super useful to view the two relatively near to each other, because I think they're a perfect example of the sort of conflict that like dining fans are dealing with, which is, Alinea is much more focused this idea of, let me give you an experience that you've never had anything even close to, completely reinvent ideas. And
like Fidelia for the deaf.
Exactly. And I think in Little Washington is much more about, let's achieve sort of the apotheosis of French dining, of, every single ingredient is something that I have seen before, but never quite at that level, And I think both of them are entirely reasonable things to want in a dining experience. But I think we have our preferences in the same way that some people prefer Italian to German opera,
Yeah. So if we could relate opera to sort of the fads in, haute cuisine, what is molecular gastronomy in terms of music? And what is and the type of cooking? I mean, French, like classic French, restaurant food is its own, like, clearly that's a genre in music, and like Italian food is so Italian, like the music and the food are so much alike. It's fantastic,
Yeah, I think it's like, in Little Washington's like watching Callas do Norma. and I think Alinea is more like watching Stravinsky conduct Rite of Spring.
Okay.
For the first time, you feel like you're watching history being made, as opposed to in Little Washington, where I think you feel like you're
part of a tradition, like you're
you're witnessing an incredible chapter in a tradition that's already been going on.
Yeah. I like that, and Weston would really like that analogy too. Our new music guy on the show, and George, by the way, George Cedequist says hi.
Oh, George! Great to see him.
Yeah, this is his show. I only do the work, but he takes all the credit. So. Well, Ian Koziara, thank you so much for being on Opera Box Score.
Of course, thank you.
This just in, the 2-minute drill.
All right, listen up. Here's everything you need to know about what happened in Operaland this week.
Finalists for the Metropolitan Opera Eric and Dominique Lafont competition have been announced. There are 10 this time. Sopranos Rachel Blaustein, Esther Tonea, Alexandra Rush-Gazoff, and Julie Rosé Mezzo-sopranos Maggie Renee and Anne-Marie Stanley, tenors Matthew Cairns and Daniel O'Hearn, bass baritone Le Boo, and bass Jonas Judd. The concert finale on the stage of the Met under the baton of Maestro Marco Armiliato is on May 1st.
Musicians of the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra organized a fundraiser for the instrumentalists of the National Opera of Ukraine in Kyiv. Along with donations from Yannick Nézet-Séguin and the Met's music staff, the orchestra raised over $17,000.
Anna Netrebko has released a statement saying, quote, "There have recently been inaccurate reports in the Russian and international media as to my personal and professional life and as to my future performances," end quote. The statement comes as Russian news outlets report the soprano is performing at the Mariinsky Theater during the Stars of the White Knights Festival.
Meanwhile, the French online magazine Forum Opera released an image of the curtain call from Monte Carlo Opera's production of Manon Lescaut. The photo includes Anna Netrebko standing under the image of a Ukrainian flag projected above the stage.
In worldwide news, hell has frozen over. 80 years after Malta's Royal Opera House was bombed in World War II, the ruins have remained as an open-air performance space. But a recent government survey has revealed that the people of Malta prefer their opera with the roof on, with a majority of respondents requesting some kind of enclosure for the space. They're not unreasonable, however. 44% said that it would be okay if the ceiling was merely retractable.
PSA from our friends at Opera Wire. Opera Wire disassociates itself from the Vincenzo Bellini International Vocal Competition. We recognize that any past advertising of this competition on our channels and the potential impact it might have had on the opera community is a mistake on our behalf, and we apologize for this circumstance. We are taking all measures to ensure that this never happens again.
Peter Gelb has revealed that director Simon Stone will return to the Met to lead another new production. In an interview with the New York Times, Gelb said Stone will stage Kaya Sarajarho's Innocence, which was first produced at the Aix-en-Provence Festival.
And that vote of confidence comes just as Stone's new production of Donizetti's Lucia di Lammermoor opened at the Met last Saturday and was promptly booed by the audience.
Portland Opera has announced its 22-23 season, which includes Dvorak's Rusalka, Bizet's Carmen, directed by Denise Graves, a new opera by Kamala Sankram about a Pakistani human rights activist who survived an honor revenge gang rape, and an evening of Terence Blanchard featuring Will Liverman and Karen Slack.
An English National Opera has announced its upcoming season, which includes Jake Heggie's version of the classic film It's a Wonderful Life, more of The Ring Cycle, directed by Richard Jones, ENO's artistic director Anneliese Miskimmen directing Korngold's Die Tote Stadt, Janine Tesori's opera Blue, and ENO's first ever production of Gilbert and Sullivan's The Yeoman of the Guard.
It's about time. In trade news, Malmo Opera has fired Danish CEO Michael Boyesen following accusations of sexual harassment prior to taking up his position at the company. Karina Ostrander will take over as acting CEO.
On the disabled list, both Nina Stemme and Lisa Davidson bowed out of the final performance of Elektra at the Metropolitan Opera. They were replaced by Rebecca Nash and Wendy Bryn Harmer, respectively.
And on this day, April 25th, in 1779, it was the first performance of Haydn's opera La Vera Costanza. In 1788, the creator of the role of Kaspar in Der Freischütz was born. That would be German bass baritone Heinrich Blume. In 1865, everybody's favorite Delibes opera premiered, Le Boeuf à Pied. In 1875, French composer Jean Nougue was born in Bordeaux. He composed many operas. I don't recognize any of them. In 1881, it was the first performance of Gilbert and Sullivan's operetta, Patience, another one for GNS. In 1900, Italian tenor...
What a day.
I know. Bruno Landi was born. In 1913, we saw the premiere of Panurge, an opera by Jules Massenet. In 1915, Italian bass Italo Taglio was born. In 1918, Swedish soprano Astrid Varney was born. In 1926, Puccini's opera Turandot premiered at La Scala. It's Turandot Day, everybody. And in 1937, Italian tenor Franco Bonisoli was born.
And that is your 2-minute drill.
bit of Franco Bonisoli performing the riddle scene, or the conclusion of the riddle scene from Turandot, from a 1986 production in London.
See, I grew up in a dot family. We were not messing around with this silent T nonsense.
Yeah.
Turandot, the T's there. Puccini pronounced the T. And I love any chance to correct Oliver when I can. I know it's a debate.
No, I
am firmly a dot man.
I actually think it is, the T is supposed to be pronounced, but it's out of habit now. You know,
I would also say dot,
can't
but
do it.
no one's listening to me. I wonder what your opinion is, listeners. You let us know. Send us a voice memo. Email us your
Team
hot
dot
takes.
or Team dough.
You know, if we were
operaboxscore@gmail.com.
social media savvy, we would do one of those like Instagram polls, like, you know, it's like dot dough, you know. So
I love that, man. It's Turandot Day. It's also GNS Day, apparently. Yeoman of the Guard, patience. I just my cup runneth over. I'm
gross.
You know, it's really super exciting. Okay, I didn't. So the Vincenzo Bellini competition.
Okay, so this is just a quick thing. There was this competition, the Vincenzo Bellini International Competition. Apparently, it's run by sort of like a Boris Martinovich type of deal. It's run by a singer coach named Diana Amati, who also runs a magazine called Opera Culture News. Never heard of that. So they were apparently already collecting, what do you call it? Application fees. And they were advertising on Opera Wire, and enough people said, hey, this is a scam. And so Opera Wire took down the ads and put out a statement saying, we don't want to associate ourselves with this anymore. So anyway, I mean, that's just like, when you have so many people that are just trying to figure out a way to like get heard and get known, this is so, you know, taking advantage of whatever people who can't really afford it in the first place, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's also confusing too, because I can't make super heads or tails of it. So correct me if I'm wrong here, but there also seems to be two of this competition. One of them might be legit. One of them is definitely not. If you Google the competition, you get two websites. One is still up. The other one says, and I'm looking at it right now, thank you for your interest in our competition, and we apologize for having to permanently close. So I think that one might be the less legit one, but the other one doesn't look super official either. And there are a lot of red flags, like, you know, not having specific jurors named and things like this. But
and Oliver, I appreciate you pointing out that this is actually a relatively easy way to make a quick buck, right? Mm-hmm. Initially, I'm thinking like this is quite complex, but actually, with, you know, thousands of emerging opera singers out there who could probably afford to throw, you know, $5, $10, $25 in a pot for some sort of legitimacy. Yeah. You can see how someone could make some money off of this.
Oh, especially across, like, you know, country lines. Like, you know, it becomes so much harder to get your money back if you're half a world away, you know.
Well, it seems more exciting because you want to be in that other world, and that's where
break out in Italy. Americans don't break out in Italy, just so you know.
Yeah. Another weird one. I feel like these are going to become more and more common. I mean, they already are more common. It's just funny to me. This is not the first time we've seen this kind of strange thing.
Yeah, it's almost the anniversary of the Martinovich.
I know. It's like someone was taking notes, you know?
What if Diana Armati is actually the same person, the Martinovich woman, you know? Wasn't her name Diana as well? What if she just changed her name?
Oh, it's the perfect crime.
I want to get back to the bel canto to talk about Lucia, but before we do, let's look at these season announcements pretty quickly. Portland Opera, of course, the artistic director there, Priti Gandhi. This is an interesting season, right? So Rusalka and Carmen being directed by Denise Graves.
I think that's her second go at it. I think she did it at OTSL or Des Moines or something like that. Like, it's not her first Carmen. So, yeah. Legendary Carmen.
That's exciting. Right, so, and then you know, two absolute, you know, world premieres. I mean, the piece by Kamala Sankaram is a brand new opera, and that's clearly like a big focal point of the season. The Terrence Blanchard,
Yeah,
looks like it's more of a
it's
concert, but
inspired by so the show is going to be called Thumbprint, and it's inspired by the story of Mukhtar Mai, who was a Pakistani human rights activist who was the victim of a sanctioned revenge rape, or like an honor thing. It's like those horrible things that happens in other parts of the world.
It sounds like a pretty heavy production, I think.
Yeah. It's commissioned by Beth Morrison Projects, and it will star Maya Kirani, who is an incredible soprano. You can just look for her videos of her singing like Da Tempeste and stuff like that. She's fantastic. And there are other people in the cast I don't recognize, but it seems to be an all South Asian cast, which is great.
Yeah, that is good.
I mean, of course, English National Opera's thing is that all their work is done in English. It's just like the Komische Oper in Berlin. All their work is done in German. So they're going with the vernacular here. I'm interested to see how Tote Stadt is going to play in German. I can't believe that this ring cycle is
in English. You mean
in English?
Yeah.
My mind jumped the tracks there. I'm not sure that the Richard Jones ring cycle is in English. I don't know how that could be, but
isn't that the one that they did before, like the famous one?
No. This is a new production, which I think is coming to the Met.
Well, there's no reason why they can't. There's no reason why they can't sing it. I mean, if the production doesn't mandate,
I suppose. Yeah. That's fair.
Yeah, but then you have a whole bunch of other pieces of the repertoire which are written in English. The Jake Heggie piece, "It's a Wonderful Life." The Janine.
Are you surprised
piece,
about all this? I'm sorry. I'm confused. Hasn't that been their model their whole time?
No, I'm not surprised by it. I think it makes great sense. I think it makes absolute sense. I'm sure Yeoman of the Guard, of course, is in English.
He just wants to talk about Yeoman of the Guard. It's his favorite.
There we go.
Yeah. I will say, I think that translating Die Tote Stadt's going to be interesting, because some of those lines in the orchestration it's kind of you really need those German consonants to cut through so you understand what's going on.
I disagree. I think that English actually and German have enough in common where it's not that hard. I think it's hard to get out of romantic language into German or into English. But
yeah, that's the trick.
German into English is it's not so hard. Now, if they're doing Akhenaten, they've done it before.
Right, it's a revival.
Yeah, so how do they get around not singing it in whatever Egyptian or whatever language is?
Well, I think you would let that slide, probably.
Okay.
I think you'd let that go. Okay. So here we go. Lucia di Lammermoor. 2007 at the Met is when the Mary Zimmerman production first happened. I was Mary's personal assistant. I was not an assistant director at the Met. I was her personal assistant on the 2012 revival. Look, that production, it's very traditional, straight down the middle. It's not super exciting, but it's well crafted and done. The current production, the Simon Stone production, which opened late last week, is officially a capital M mess. Have either of you read any reviews?
I've read all the reviews. It's been so much fun to read these reviews.
Why has it been
some highlights? I'm completely in the dark on it. So hit me with everything you've got.
Well, apparently there are these projections that are very distracting and causes the viewer to always just look at the projection and not look at what's actually happening on stage. And then the stage is rotating all the time. So it's like, I haven't seen it yet, and I am going to still go. Actually, I'm more intrigued. I'm still going to go to the HD broadcast.
Oh, absolutely. Of course I am.
But, it's updated to like the sticks in the U.S. or Appalachia, which is like whatever heroin country or crystal meth or whatever drug overdose country. And it was supposed to be about Lucia having a drug problem. But I guess they took the drug element out of it after whatever workshopping or whatever. So now it's not even clear like what her deal is and why she's hallucinating. And it's supposedly just a visual mess. and not everybody can act. There's one of my favorite singers is in that show, but not known for his acting. And yeah, it just sort of they assembled a great bel canto cast, and they're making it about this production, and the stars can't shine.
Let me fill in a few more gaps here. So the reason the projections are distracting, first of all, close your eyes, picture in your head the proscenium arch.
Oh, I can see it. At
Lincoln Center, at the main stage. Imagine the top half of that. How many feet must that be? All taken up by a video screen, which is constantly active. I don't care if you have the greatest focus in the world. If there's a bright light on a big screen, you're going to look at it. I don't care if Nadine Sierra is on that stage. I don't care if Camarena is on that stage. You will not be looking at them because that's not how our eyeballs are wired. You're going to be looking at that screen, and that does a disservice to those performers.
I think it sounds neat personally,
no, it's not neat. It's not neat. We're not here for neat. Okay. Here's the thing. So as Oliver said, the production is set in a sort of unnamed American Rust Belt state. I'm going to say this: Simon Stone, stay in your lane. Oh. Stay in your lane. All right. Look, here's the thing, man. You were born in Switzerland. That's great. Good for you. You speak 4 languages. You grew up in Australia. Fantastic. So the water goes down your toilet bowl the other direction. Okay, man? Here's the thing. Stay in your lane. Don't come to this country and start doing pieces about some unnamed, unknown Rust Belt state. You don't know those people? You don't know their lives? And for you to put that on a stage is disrespectful. It's disgusting, and it's a disgrace. It is you think I'm joking. Oliver and Western are laughing because they think I'm joking right now. I'm not. I'm hot on this. I think that is the biggest amount of BS I've ever seen, and I think you are doing an injustice to those people who live real lives. Putting drug use on the stage. Who do you think you are? And then you come, listen, man, I know you've had a hard life too, because I did some research, and I'm sorry for you. You had a rough childhood. I get that. People boo this production. They're booing you. I get that. I don't agree with that. Think, man. Think before you act.
That was a great monologue. I think I've got you for the part of angry director number 1 in our upcoming production of...
I felt like it was like a Fox News rant or something like that. You know, like
we'll do it live.
No, it's just like, this is America. You know, you can't... This is the greatest country in the world, you know?
No, I'm saying do your research. You should look up Stephen A. Smith on ESPN, by the way.
Okay. I know Stephen Smith. So.
If you want to, man, I'm spent. I don't know if I can talk about anything else on this.
Good night, George.
We're going to talk about just whatever. We don't need to talk about Anna Trepko. She digged her own grave, so.
She's all over the place. She's, it's hard to tell what is desperation and what is her actual opinion at this point. And, at this point, I don't think that anyone who really actually cares really is, is just kind of giving up on it. And that's kind of where I am.
All right. So Simon Stone, get this. Let's wrap this show up.
Good call. Bad call on Opera Box Score.
Good call, bad call. We're going to wake you up or take you home or fill in your lunch break wherever you are, however you're listening to the show. It's Good Call, Bad Call. Oliver Camacho.
If you are listening to this when this comes out and you're in the Chicago area, get to the Vivica Jeannot concert this weekend with Third Coast Baroque. Should be doing like all, not world premieres, but music has not been sung for like 300 years. That's her specialty. She's performing with Ruben Dubrovsky, who is a friend of the show. He's the artistic director of Third Coast Baroque and also just got a job as the artistic director of some opera house in Germany. I forget which one. But anyway, it's Vivica Jeannot. She's incredible. Go hear her.
Weston Williams.
Regardless of what George may think about the production, or apparently anyone who's seen it, I've been enjoying Nadine Sierra's Instagram of the production of Lucia in from the Met, and it's I was just scrolling through Instagram one day, and I just scroll past the most horrifying amount of blood I've ever seen in a Lucia production, up close and personal, just lounging around, having a good time. And there's been a whole series of that on her Instagram, and I highly recommend you check it out, because that might be the only enjoyment you get from this production, if George is to be believed.
It literally looks like Carrie, the film. Like she's
just like an absolute
dripping.
massacre.
It looks like a 3-year-old eating a chocolate sundae. Discovered. Speaking of 3-year-olds, my 12-year-old came to see the opera that I directed last week. It's a brilliant piece called The Falling and the Rising, music by Zach Redler, libretto by Jerry Dye. And afterwards I said, hey, so, what'd you think of the show? And he says, it was good, but it's no Hansel and Gretel.
Yeah, he got you. He got you good.
Man, it hurts. All right, that's it for this week's edition of America's Talk Radio Show about opera. Our announcer, he's Norm Waddell. NormWaddell.com. If you are watching on TDO, make sure you subscribe to the podcast on Stitcher and Spotify. You get the full show by clicking follow Apple Podcasts. You just hit the plus sign. Again, send us a voice memo. Email us your hot takes, operaboxscore@gmail.com. You're going to get that merch and that swag, beer coaster, OBS lapel pin. Our creative consultant is indeed Oliver Camacho. Our audio and video editor is Weston Williams. For our guest, Ian Koziara, I'm George Cedarquist, asking you to continue the conversation about opera while you focus on the performance, not on a screen. We're back with an all-new show next week, plus you're going to get more opera headlines, more hot takes, and more love for Simon Stone, who wrote this stuff. Join us.